I'm Liz Thorpe, and I'm a cheese expert. It's like really intense. Hard cheeses. Right off the bat, what I'm seeing is that this cheese is very aged. I can tell because it's kind of brown, yellowy, dark in color. And it's got these little white patches in it, which happens as cheese ages around a year. They will get these little protein crystals in them that make them kind of crunchy. Also important is the rind. So it's got this dark, crusty exterior. That means it's been aged out in the open air. I'm thinking this is maybe an aged Gouda or like a really aged Parmigiano Reggiano. This cheese doesn't have the dark color, doesn't have the little crunchy white crystals, and it doesn't really have a rind. It's the same all the way around. I'm thinking it's definitely younger, and I'm guessing it's probably like a Parmesan style. I'm gonna have to taste to find out. This cheese smells really concentrated and really intense. It's like waxy, like biting into a crayon with little salt or sugar crystals in it. And this is definitely Parmigiano Reggiano. This one is totally different. It's firm, but it's creamy and it's almost sweet, kind of like cheese candy. My guess is that this is Parmesan versus Parmigiano Reggiano. I'm guessing A is the more expensive one. Yeah, about twice as expensive. So why would Parmigiano Reggiano be twice as expensive as American-made Parmesan? Parmigiano Reggiano is a regulated cheese. For example, it can only be made in a few regions around Reggio Emilia in northern Italy. It has to be made of raw or unpasteurized cow's milk. And it has to be aged for a minimum of 18 months in open-air aging rooms. It's turned, it's flipped, it's brushed by hand and by weird robot machines that are really cool. American Parmesan, on the other hand, doesn't have any aging restrictions, and it's actually aged in plastic. I often go for Parmesan just because it's mixed in with a lot of other stuff, and I personally don't notice the difference as much. But if I'm using Parm on top of something like a salad, where I really get the flavor of the cheese, I always use Parmigiano Reggiano. When it's front and center, you really, really want to taste the cheese. So right off the bat, this one is definitely a fresh goat cheese. What that means is it's bright white. Goat milk is always whiter than cow milk or sheep milk. And I can tell it's a fresh cheese because it has no rind on the outside. It's young, probably been made in the last couple of days or the last couple of weeks. This one, on the other hand, has this weird brainy looking rind on the outside. So it doesn't look like a brie, but it's definitely got a molded or yeasty rind like a brie. Definitely this one is more labor intensive. I'm gonna start with A. See, it's totally different. Doesn't really smell like anything, which is actually a good thing. You don't want fresh cheese to smell. Definitely fresh goat cheese. It's like cream cheese, but tangy, lemony. It's like sticking to my mouth. I can barely talk. B, I'm not so sure. We're gonna have to cut it open. This is an aged goat cheese, kind of like a brie style. Definitely stronger, smells kind of nutty. I'm gonna guess this is about 4 to 8 weeks old because it's gonna take that much time to grow this style of rind on the outside of the cheese. A cheese like this could have been made by hand, but it also could have been made by a machine. If you think about little goat logs you buy in the supermarket, they go right into their plastic wrapping. Okay, I'm going with B. B is definitely the more expensive cheese. Okay, it was a lot more expensive. I was right. All that work makes this cheese 5 times more expensive. And it's the reason why you generally cook with this style of cheese, but you sit around with your friends and eat this style of cheese. This one is really hard because these really look very much the same. What I can tell is that they're the same style of cheese, like what are called cooked pressed cheeses. Cheese people call it an Alpine style of cheese made in the mountains. I can tell that because they're not moist and creamy, they're firm. They're both aged. They both have little white specks, so they're probably about the same age, probably about 10 months. And they have a similar rind. The rind is a little bit orange. I will say one of the only visual differences between these two is that this cheese is darker yellow. That's usually a sign of grass-fed cow's milk. So cows that are eating only grass, Their milk is actually a deeper yellow color from the beta carotene in the grass, and it comes through the milk and you can see it in the cheese. I think I need to taste them. I'm gonna start with A. So it smells like cooked milk, like if you boil milk on the stove, and roasted nuts and oniony smells, like caramelized onions. Those are all Swiss cheese, Alpine cheese smells. I'm not there yet, but definitely we're in the mountains somewhere. I may be grasping at straws here, but I'm guessing this is grass-fed cow's milk, which might mean something. This one is much more complex. It's got lots of fruity flavors. It's very, very tender in texture. It's a beautiful texture. It's like dough. I think this is gruyère, Swiss gruyère, which is a very famous cow's milk cheese from the mountains. But I am going to guess that this is the more expensive one because I think it's grass-fed cow's milk and it just tastes amazing. I'm going B. B is my guess. All right. I do know my stuff. No, just kidding. So this is a Swiss cheese. This is definitely gruyère. And then this is a cheese that is made by a single farm. This is ultimately the vote with your dollars choice because this producer has chosen to make a cheese from exclusively grass-fed milk, and it is very, very expensive to do that. Over in Switzerland and in most of the EU, there are a lot of government subsidies that support traditional food making. So why buy one over the other? You can use them for the same thing. They're both really delicious, but here I would say you spend more money because you're voting with your dollars. And supporting this type of food production in America is really, really important. Okay, I love this comparison because pretty much anyone would look at these and say, oh, it's feta cheese. But I'll tell you what I see right off the bat. Two things. This one is really wet. It's been packaged in brine, in salt water. This one's kind of dry and crumbly looking. And then the other thing I see is that this one is really, really smooth, and this one is kind of rough looking. So I actually think that this one is made with a different type of milk. So this is the drier looking one. It wasn't as wet and it's kind of crummy. This one, the wetter one, is much like smoother and creamier. That's our milk difference, I think. It's super salty, but like all I taste is salt. It's like salty crumbs. This one smells like olives, like black olives. And it tastes totally different. Okay, so here's what I think is going on. I definitely think that this is the more expensive one. Real feta, real sheep, real goat milk costs more, I think. Am I right? Yes. So the main reason Greek feta, traditional feta, is going to be more expensive is actually because of the milk. So it's made with sheep milk and goat milk. It has to be. By Greek law, that's how you have to do it. American-made feta can be made with any kind of milk, and in this case, it's made with cow's milk. So small sheep make very rich milk, but they don't make a lot of it, and it's expensive. It takes considerably more sheep milk to make the same amount of cheese. But the difference in price isn't that huge with feta, and so if there's a time to really splurge and spend the extra couple of bucks, this would be it. So here come the blue cheeses. The difference between these two cheeses is going to be sort of the culmination of all of the differences that we've seen throughout all the styles of cheese. Right off the bat, I'm noticing some age differences between these two blues. So this one is lighter in color, and you can see it's more crumbly in texture. The second thing, you can actually see in the top of the wheel these little holes, and that is how a blue cheese gets blue. The cheesemaker adds mold to the milk during cheese making, but in order to make the mold grow, you have to get air into the cheese, and you do that by poking holes in the cheese. This one is sort of smoother and denser. I'm thinking this one has been aged longer. It sort of had time to like meld together a little bit more. It's sort of more marbled and less concentrated. So I'm thinking this one might have been pierced by hand, this one pierced by machine. That's gonna make a big difference. And then of course, this one is obviously wrapped in some kind of leaf, and I know of 2 blue cheeses in the world that are wrapped in leaves. I'm thinking there's something special going on with this cheese. I'm gonna taste them and find out. Let's see. This is like classic blue cheese dressing. I need a wedge salad. This is a really good kind of standard American style blue cheese. This one, and you can see it's creamier. It doesn't fall apart in the same way. It has this really strong fruity smell. It's just not all about salt and spice the way that that typical blue cheese flavor is. So that's kind of confirming my suspicions about cheese B. I am definitely thinking cheese B is the more expensive cheese, and I think it is a singular cheese that's made only by one farmer in the whole world. That's my guess. So let me reveal. Yeah, it's also one of the most expensive cheeses I know. So what makes it a 40, or I've even seen it be a $50+ a pound cheese versus like a $15 or $16 a pound cheese? That's pretty much all the stuff I talked about. It's aging. It's the fact that this is, I'm guessing, a really well-made but pretty machine-made cheese versus a very handmade cheese. And it has to do with this leaf wrapping. This is it's New Year's, it's Christmas. I'm gonna splurge on something that I can only get once a year. This is that cheese. So it's Tuesday night versus special party cheese. And that is what we're looking at. So you can see that there's tons of choices, and cheese might seem expensive, but there are reasons behind that. And I hope that you have a little bit more information so that now when you go out to buy cheese, you can decide what is the best cheese for you that day.